We're breaking down walls, tearing apart the lies. Together we'll stand, watch the whole world rise. Faith transcends boundaries, uniting every heart. In this movement of love, we're all taking part.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Vision Podcast. I'm Daniel, your host. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today's episode is sponsored by Path Recovery. I even got their hat on. Make sure you check them out at pathrecoverytn.com. Today's guest is such an awesome guy. We haven't known each other that long, but just a little bit of time that I have known him, I've been blessed just to have great conversation about some amazing topics, even just for a moment. I mean, but you can tell that the Spirit of God is residing within this man and moving and flowing. It's just amazing to me when you meet people like that and you can just see it and sense it and feel it. And I'm so grateful, and hopefully that sense will come through these cameras today. He is a drummer for the band Sheppard. He's also a former theology teacher and music teacher at a school here in Nashville, and just a great overall guy. Help me welcome Jon Butterworth.
Hello. How's it going?
Thank you so much for being here.
Dude, thanks for having me on. I'm so excited about this.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I'm excited for the topic today and just to have some conversation, be able to hear your story.
Sure.
For those of you listening, we're going to be touching a little bit on comparison and just kind of what that looks like in our lives within the faith and just overall, Jon actually gave me this topic, so thank you for bringing that topic up. And
of course.
I'm kind of curious of why that topic came to your mind.
Oh man, I don't even know where to begin. I'll begin somewhere though.
Yes.
Comparison is something that I've definitely dealt with my entire life. And I was saved later in life. I was saved when I was 32 years old. I'm 37 now. It used to, before I was a believer, I very much ran off of my works were my worth. Contrary to my last name, which is Butterworth, but my works are my worth. And if I didn't perform, then I wasn't worth anything. And that would go on to, I'm a drummer. If I had a gig where I messed something up, if I made a mistake, well, that night, that week was a wash. And I would beat myself up. And so I've struggled with it as an unbeliever. And I even find myself, struggling with it as a believer, as we just look around and we see other people living their lives, especially on like social media. You see everyone's highlight reel, right?
Yeah,
and that can be so difficult because, I heard a pastor, Alex Seeley at The Belonging say one time that it's very easy to pray for someone else's blessing or pray for someone else's miracle. Yeah. And how often do we look around and see other people's lives, and especially like even the messy stories? I know some Christians who they grew up believers and they've always been faithful. And then, they see somebody who got saved later in life, or they see someone who's gone through some really hard stuff. And I mean, sometimes they get a little jealous because they don't have that wow story of and then God, met me where I was at and he interceded. Like, have you ever heard Brian Welch's story? He's the guitar player for Korn.
Oh,
he got radically saved, and he literally one night just went home and took the rest of the drugs that he had. And then he said, God, if you're real, show yourself. And he did. Yeah. And he met him. It was like a road to Damascus kind of thing, met him where he was at and worked on his heart. But we sometimes as Christians, we can look at those stories and say, oh, I want a crazy story like that. But how gracious is your Father that he hasn't subjected you to those things. So we can compare in the faith, we can compare in the world. But when we do that, we're missing God's calling on our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you said you're a believer late in your life.
Yeah.
Right. And how did how did your life growing up? How did you get to that conclusion of yourself? How did you come to believe that? Like where on your journey did your identity say, I'm not good enough, I need to be something else?
Oh man. When people ask me how long I've been playing drums, I always say, like, kind of my snarky answer is, I got my first drum set when I was 2 years old. Like I was banging on pots and pans, and my parents were like, oh, this would be really cool. And they really believe in the arts. And so they bought me my first drum set, and it had like paper heads on it, and like, it's crazy.
Cool.
Like, one hit and it was broken, but as awesome as that was, because that was awesome. I also grew up kind of just being Jon the drummer. And so my identity was placed in that. And I would even think about, holidays where musicians work, and that's, New Year's Eve, St. Patty's Day, 4th of July. If I didn't have a gig those nights, I felt I'd beat myself up.
Yeah.
And, so I think there's a lot of, especially in the freelancer world, there's a lot of comparison.
Yeah, I can see how that can kind of run rampant out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so where did God come in all this? How'd that story
it's
happen?
My favorite story.
Yeah. Let's hear it, man.
But I grew up in an awesome household. My parents are phenomenal. They've been married for 52 years, which is really great.
Cool.
And really just definitely set a great example for me of like what a loving relationship looks like. But I grew up and then started playing in churches because I was a drummer and never really had Sunday mornings booked. And so, I joke that, I did it for the money, but that's not really a joke. I was doing it for the money. Yeah. I was always respectful. But I never really listened. I never really understood. And then that was pretty much like 18 to 31, 32. That's just what I did. Get home at like 3 a.m. from a gig and then wake up a couple hours later to go play church. And then I met my amazing wife on a tour. I was playing for a pop artist who was based out of Vegas. And we were on tour, and her best friend was living in Nashville, and she like wrote songs with her. And so whenever we were close to Nashville, the artist I was playing for would be like, hey, like come out to a show or whatever. And so I met my wife in Atlanta. We were playing a show down there, opening for an artist named Betty Who, which is a crazy name.
ATL.
But so she came out, and my wife doesn't believe me, but as soon as I saw her, the first time I saw her, I thought, if that girl will have me, I will marry her. Because I knew, and like factors play into that too. But I after seeing it, I believe in the you don't know until you know kind of thing. So we hung out that night. We really clicked. We vibed. And then the next day, the show got canceled because of like ticket sales. And so we had the day off.
Yeah.
And so we went to the aquarium in Atlanta, which if you've been there, it's the most magical place.
I haven't. I need to check it out.
They have a whale there.
Well,
They got a whale. They got a whale shark. They have like a whole like shark exhibit. It's beautiful. But so like, we were having a great time. And then the next day it was time for us to head back, continue on with our tour. And then my wife, Britt, was, obviously not back then, wasn't my wife, but was headed back to Nashville. And I just asked, I was like, hey, like, can I have your number? And she goes, I don't do long distance. The next, cause she was kind of fed up with the dating scene. The next, guy that I date, I'm going to marry, which I was like, nice. I'll do that. And then she goes, and I need to have somebody who believes the same that I do and is a Christian. And so I told her, I said, well, distance is fine. Like if I need to move, I'll move. Cause I knew I liked her. And then I said, I'm open to hearing about your faith. I've never really dove into Christianity. I'm not quite sure I know what that is, like what it's all about. And so she gave me your number, and she told me that I needed to call her every day. And I hated the phone. And I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it, you know. And so we started calling each other, like talking like 3 or 4 hours every day. Once a month, one of us would go visit each other. So I was in LA, she was in Nashville, and we.
Oh wow! Yeah.
But it was amazing because we got to talk about, you know, if we want kids or not. We would talk about where we want to live, what our hopes and dreams are, what our childhoods look like, you know, and then especially faith. And she started telling me Bible stories. And back then I was, I guess, agnostic and very much like believed in karma. Because I saw the universe working around me.
Yeah.
And I saw that, like, if I went out and met people who were put in my life instead of staying home, then years later that person could refer me to something. And it was all because of this one little conversation over here. Right. And so in my mind, I was like, oh, like the universe did this. And I'd say that to my wife, and she'd go, yeah, God. And I was like, yeah, you know, like the universe. And she's like, no, God, right? That was funny. And then I was getting ready to move. I got a job opportunity in Nashville. And I was getting ready to move. And this was like December 21st of 2018. And I get a call from her, and she goes, you're moving to Nashville. And I was like, yeah, I'm stoked. And she goes, well, if you move here, we're probably going to get married. Like, I'm assuming, like, and she goes, I can't marry you if you're not a Christian. And I was just like, what? You know, so upset about it. I did not take it well. And we didn't talk for like a couple days. But I told her, I said, I feel like from that comment that my love or your love for me is conditional. And she goes, well, it's not. I still love you. She goes, but I need you to try. Because, like, you know, our kids, if we have kids, are they going to go to church? Are we going to tithe? Like, who's going to pray over our family? And I didn't understand any of that. And so I said, of course I'll try. A couple days go by, and one of her friends who she was talking to about it sent her a podcast or a sermon by Tim Keller. And it was recorded back in, I think it was 2012, and this was 2018. And the episode, the sermon was called "The Meaning of Christmas." And so I listened to it, and it made so much sense to me. I was listening to it on a drive home from teaching a drum lesson, and I listened to it on the way home. And then this was Christmas Eve of 2018, and typically I played a gig at a theme park out in LA on Christmas because it was like double pay. But this year I didn't have that. So I had the day free, and flights were too expensive to go home. And so I got home and I listened to it again, and I started taking notes. And then I remember in my notebook, I wrote, like, God, I'm all in. I invite Jesus into my heart. And then I thought, I think this is like going to happen, you know, hope. And then the next sermon down, because it was on YouTube, it was before Spotify had anything on for like podcasts or anything. The next sermon was how to pray. And I was like, oh, I got to check this out. My wife talked about praying, or my girlfriend talked about praying. I should learn about it. And so it was another Tim Keller, and he said, the way you start to pray is you recite the Lord's Prayer. And then when you're done, you say, Lord, I've been a fool. And you list the ways you've been a fool that you can see. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do this tomorrow on Christmas Day, like with my girlfriend, and it's going to be romantic and awesome. And, you know, and then my heart just started racing, and I thought, no, I need to do this right now. This is not something for tomorrow. And so I did. And I prayed for what felt like 20 minutes, but it was 2 hours.
Wow.
And I just remember, the thing I still remember now is I was laying in my room in LA in the dark. And I heard, I didn't hear the audible voice of God, but I heard him on my heart say, all the things that you were thankful for, all the things that you were attributing to the universe, it was me. It was me the whole time. And I learned later that ever since my wife was born, because her mom is like a prayer warrior.
Yeah.
But she said ever since my wife was born, she started praying for her future husband. So that means that since I was a baby, I had someone praying for me, which I love.
That's
and that
cool.
was my protection. That was my
That's
hedge
cool.
of protection, you know?
Yeah.
And side note, when I asked her mom if I could marry her over the phone, she told me a dream that she had. She has these crazy dreams.
Yeah.
She said about 2 weeks after my wife and I met, my wife called her mom because I had planned a trip to Nashville. And she was like, shoot, like, this guy's not a believer. I got to call my mom to like have her talk some sense into me and say, Britt, like, shut it down. Like, don't do this.
Yeah.
Right. He's not a believer. So she calls her mom and she goes, so Mom, I met a boy. He's really nice. I really like him. He's coming to visit. And her mom goes, what's his name? And she goes, John, like Jonathan. And her mom just goes, she laughs and goes, oh, that's funny. My wife was like, what? And she goes, you met him like 2 weeks ago? And my wife was like, yeah. And she goes, 2 weeks ago, I had a dream and I didn't think anything of it. So I was going to tell you, but I had a dream that you came to me with a boy and you said, this man, his name is Jonathan and I love him. And she said, the Lord said to me, that boy will love your daughter's heart.
Wow.
And she goes, Britt, you have my complete blessing in dating him and you're going to marry him and he's going to get saved.
Wow.
Which is insane,
That's a
right?
wild,
Like, and I
yeah.
found this out later, like way after I got saved.
Yeah. You don't hear about that stuff too much. Man.
That's what I love. That's why I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about it because there's so much. I mean, we can talk about this too with comparison, but like so much comparison and so much debate with it, even within the church of what happens, what doesn't happen, what is show, what is authentic believer. And so I think it's important to talk about the miracles that we have and, you know, the way that God moves in our lives. Because we're supposed to share things and that's how people learn and that's how people
share our lives,
get their faith built. And exactly.
Yeah.
But kind of along the way of that with comparison, something that Tim Keller said in that sermon that I loved is he goes, if you believe that you can do your life on your own, then you're going to be bitter because people around you are getting the opportunities that you're not getting, or you're going to be arrogant because you believe that you're better than everyone else and that's why you're getting the opportunities, or you're going to be completely destitute and undone because you have failed and that's why you don't have opportunities. And he said, or it's going to happen one after another and it'll just be a cycle that goes over and over.
Yeah.
And that was me. That was me my entire life, of why is this person getting the big gig that I didn't get? Like, what's wrong with me? Or, you know, I'm better than that person. Like, shouldn't I be doing X, Y, and Z? And, and it wasn't until God revealed his plan for my life, and he's still revealing it, obviously, but revealed that he had a plan for my life, that that stuff doesn't matter because, you know, and we were talking about this a little bit beforehand, but, you know, I've been praying a lot and God's been putting on my heart that every single thing in my life, in your life, that has happened to you, it makes you who you are today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, I like you. You like you're awesome. You know, we haven't known each other for that long, but like, I can't imagine, you know, you being any different. And, you know, for the sake of your friends and your family and everyone in your life, their life wouldn't be the same if you were different.
Yeah.
And so how does God not have a plan for us?
Yeah, absolutely.
and I don't want to ramble, but I got another thing that kind of confirmed that.
Okay, yeah, let's hear it.
I was just at, I was playing at D-Now. Do you know what D-Nows are? It's like, I think it's a Baptist thing, but it's like a church weekend camp. It's called, it stands for Discipleship Now.
Okay.
But it's like a church lock-in kind of thing.
Yeah.
I was playing for one about a month ago, 2 months ago. And the speaker was this phenomenal dude. He was from this church in Atlanta. And so he was talking to these students, and of course, youth pastors, they got to have props. So he had props for days, right? But he, one of his sermons was on comparison, and he had 2 ladders on stage, like step ladders. Yeah. One was like super tall. One was like medium. And of course, you walk in, you're like, what's he going to talk about? Yeah. And so he starts talking about the ladders, and he goes, I guarantee you, when you walked in and you looked at the ladders, your eyes probably went to the big one. Yeah. Because it's big. And this thing was like huge. And he goes, you can look at that one. He goes, or, you can go over, look at a slightly smaller one. And, like it's not as tall, and there's some paint on it, and, it's a different color and all that stuff. And he goes, but, if you took this huge ladder into my apartment, you wouldn't be able to use it. Yeah. And he goes, you probably couldn't even use this one. He pointed to the medium one, and he took out a step stool. And he goes, that's what I can use in my apartment to change lights. The other ladders are useless. Yeah. And his point was that for where God has placed us in our lives, and one of the teachers that I taught with when I taught theology, she would always say to her students, think about why God has placed you at this point in redemptive history. And she would always say, because the word says that God knows every hair on our heads. He's been thinking us up since before we were in our mother's womb, right? He knows everything about us. So why now? He could have put us in the Middle Ages. Yeah. He could have made us, he could have made us one of the disciples, Never know. I paused because I was like, I don't want to be blasphemous, but he could have, okay. You know what I mean? He could put us 20 years in the future, but he put us here now. So why? And so, where he has placed us, there is a specific role that he has for us. And I know it's my job to not quench the Holy Spirit and be tuned in and have my heart tuned with God's heart, my eyes uplifted on Jesus, so that I know who to pray for, or who to randomly talk to in the street, or who to point to in my life that, friends or family or wherever. And that when you look at the Instagrams, or you look at TV or wherever that we see somebody and we're like, that dude or that girl's killing it. Yeah. That would be fun to remember. Well, that's their journey, right? It's not ours. That's not mine.
Well, it reminds me of Genesis. I mean, think about what the serpent said to Adam and Eve. You can be like them. You can be like, you don't need to be like you anymore.
Right.
You need to be like God, knowing good and evil, right? That was a whole comparison issue right there.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Man. But it's like exactly what you said. Like, there's so many things that we've gone through in our life. And I know for me, prison, addiction, all these things that I've gone through, like, to set me up into a place where I met my wife, like I see God's hand in the connection and the path of weaving that he's done. Yeah. And it has set me in a place to father the children that I have, to be, to love on the people that he's placed in my life.
100%.
And but it's so easy to get caught up, man, of like, man, but look at this guy on TV, or, I'm doing podcasting. Look at Joe Rogan, bro. I'm trying to be like Joe Rogan. Like, I don't want, I'm trying to fight it.
Right.
Yeah, but it's so easy to fall into that trap because it's always like, it's alluring, man. It's like, it's almost pulling you away.
It is.
Yeah, there's always.
Well, and isn't that, it's, you put it perfectly with Genesis, of the serpent, again, just that alluring of And it was something that Matt Chandler would always say. He goes, the devil lulls us into a spot of security. And I guess in our sense, or in the comparison sense, insecurity.
Yeah.
Of, I'll be happy when.
Oh, yeah.
Or I would be happy if.
Yeah. My sponsor tells me that all the time. He's like, you got a case of the it'll be okay wins. Right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. And it's a healthy reminder, I think, for me to live in the present. Because I had a pastor tell me one time, he goes, we forget the past as we grow older. We can't tell the future and we can't make sense of the present.
Yeah.
And that's why we need Jesus. But it's easy to look forward. It's easy to look elsewhere.
Yeah.
And be distracted by that and not see what God has for us in the moment. And my wife actually said something really interesting to me the other day. We were talking about comparison, and we were talking about, this has been on my heart for a while. And kind of on the other side of it, I was talking about where God has me and, all that stupid stuff of the comparison of like, other people are getting opportunities that I think I would be perfect for, kind of thing. Which is silly because, again, that's disbelief. And she goes, and I love this because she is my truest mirror.
Yeah.
Your wives are, right? Like every time, anytime a fight of ours has come up, I can always look and see my role in it and be like, that's what I need to change.
Yeah.
I did this.
That's where I screwed up. Yeah. Yikes.
But that being said, she had a great quip to me. She goes, okay, like, think about some of the things that you're posting on social media, and think of some of the things that you're excited about right now that you're doing. She goes, do you think anybody else might be thinking the exact same thing about you? They're more qualified for this, or they think they should have gotten that opportunity, and maybe they're a little jealous of you? And I was just like,
yeah.
Yes, probably. I'm the only jealous person in the history of mankind.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's really helped me because, my favorite verse in the Bible is Matthew 5:14-16. You are the light of the world. Like a city on the hilltop.
Right.
And it ends with, let your good works point people towards God. And that's something that I'm really working on right now, is making sure that my humility is in check and that anything that I'm excited about that I tell people that I'm doing or that anything that God has put in my life, that it's not something I've done, because I know it's not.
Yeah.
And, my works are as filthy rags as Paul says, I'm pretty sure he says something worse, actually. It's the Greek word is more like the crasser word for dung, It's like, starts with an S. But I don't know if this is like a family friendly. Okay. But anyway, but that being said, I'm making sure that I don't ever let my pride get in the way, or my, that I can. I don't ever want to come across as people thinking that my works are the reason why I'm doing anything cool.
Yeah.
Because it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can see that. And you're talking about looking at the other way of social. Because I know, it's it's easy to fall into the trap of look at me, or even the other side of look at them.
Right.
Why can't I have that? So it's either pride or coveting.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
Where do you stand in there, and how do you find that balance? Right.
I heard someone. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's okay. Go ahead.
I got two things. I heard someone say when it was in this book called The Inner Game of Tennis, but he was saying that we have two egos. We have an ego that tells us we're doing great. We have an ego that tells us we're terrible. And it's about balancing those, tuning those out. But then I was going to say, there's a great interview with Jim Carrey on this show called Comedians, Cars, and Coffee with Jerry Seinfeld.
Okay.
And Jim Carrey was talking about, he goes, and this is when he started seeking, because it's my understanding that he's a Christian now, which is awesome.
Which is
so excited.
Blows my mind because I've seen him on some pretty wild
dude,
videos.
Him and Russell Brand, man, I'm so stoked about it. I'm so excited. But he was saying, he goes, you know, when you work for something your entire life and you achieve it, you reach that mountaintop.
Yeah.
And then you realize that you're still not happy in it. You know, you think, well, what else? What next? And he goes, that's why people develop drug problems.
Yeah.
Let me reverse that because that was not correct. That's why celebrities can develop drug problems. People, it's the idea when you reach the top and you're like, well, what else? I guess there's nothing.
Yeah. It was all.
So you fill the void.
An empty shell.
Correct.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You got accolades and everything else, but that stuff don't fill you on the inside.
No, you can't take it with you, you know, right?
It doesn't fill you. Yeah. I mean, you can try to eat money, but you're not going to get full.
Right.
Yeah. You may get sick. Well, anyway, yeah. Wow, man. It's just heavy thought about how, honestly, you know, it kind of burdens my soul.
Okay.
It burdens my soul to hear just even talk about these problems because I know that so many people deal with them. And I've done, you know, I'm not saying I'm excluded. I deal with it, you know, not that I'm past it. I try to think that I've got a better grasp on catching myself in the midst of those moments, you know, and bringing myself back to
100%.
Holding that identity of God that God gives me, not one that I'm trying to give myself or that someone else has.
Yeah.
But it's just, it burdens my soul that so many of our brothers and sisters, they go through this, man. And it's just like this, that's what the culture of our lives is, you know, especially in America. I don't know about other countries and how they really operate, but I know as Americans, even in the Christian space, you know, of like, you know, well, like, I mean, I think Paul even addresses it of like, oh, well, I was baptized by Apollos or I was baptized by Paul. Like, I'm better than you. Right. And then they're doing this whole song and dance of trying to make themselves either feel better or look better or be better than the next.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why, how, like, maybe that's just the fallen world, right? Or maybe it's just the sin nature that we're born into, but I don't know. It hurts my heart, man. I mean, just trying to, you know, just being as vulnerable as I can, man. It really hurts, you know?
Well, and, you know, I'm a firm believer that we are not supposed to know that as much knowledge as or at least we're not supposed to have the access to as much knowledge as we have right now.
Oh, like
you know,
through social media and stuff. Yeah.
And it's, you know, I think about, and again, I try not to be an old man and do the like, back in my day, you know, but
that dang internet.
Because I use it, I love it, you know, and I think a lot of good can come from it.
Yeah, for sure.
And you know, but all that being said, think about simpler times when you had a passion for cooking, and you tried to be, or you worked at being the best cook you could, and then that was something unique that you did in your town with the resources that you grew in your climate of the earth, whatever.
Yeah.
And now think about, you know, you make something really special that your grandmother passed down, and you can go online or fly somewhere, like in like 13 hours, you can fly like across the earth and get something that is better. And then that has somehow in your heart diminishes what you did.
Yeah. And it's like, why even continue doing what I love anymore?
Right. And I guess that isn't that like a results, like an acts-based thought, isn't it? Right.
Yeah.
It's not about the process. It's about the result.
Yeah. And about identifying with that my worth is contingent on
the product.
the product.
Which was me for a very long time.
Yeah.
Of, and oh my gosh, I used to be very self-deprecating. That was like my humor. And then my wife hated it. And she was just like, you should probably stop doing that. And then one day I was convicted about it. And I realized, other people might do it for different reasons, but I realized, I understood that I was making jokes at my own expense so that I would get someone to say no.
Yeah, fishing.
And then I get a compliment.
Yeah, fishing, right?
So
Get him! I got me one.
him.
I got me one. Yeah.
But like,
Stroke the ego.
that's man.
Thank you.
And now you.
Yeah.
But it's that's a lonely world to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Of comparison and of always needing affirmation from people and needing affirmation from that the work that you've done is enjoyable instead of what have you learned along the way. And that's something that I'm really passionate about is, I tell people that, and I fully believe that you learn so much more in the valleys than you do the peaks.
Yeah.
Right. And
for sure.
And so when it's hard, you're actually putting the work in. My wife just taught me how to drive stick shift.
Okay.
And
welcome.
My goodness, it's a great place to be, right? But going from my house to the Publix down the street seemed like a year.
Yeah.
Because it was so stressful.
Okay.
You see brake lights in front of you and you're like, oh, I got to go back into first gear at some point, probably going to stall.
Yeah.
But then again, what feels like a week or a month of driving, there was only like a day. You learn so much.
Yeah. And then it just becomes natural.
Yeah, it comes natural. Yeah. Instead of something that comes naturally to you and you just tune it out. It can be, we all have different circumstances and we all have different things that God is teaching us. And it can be, in my opinion, extremely difficult to be struggling through something that God is teaching me. And see somebody who is not struggling with that. Because then I'm I'm thinking, if only, must be nice for them. They don't have to worry about money.
Yeah.
They got a job that pays them 7 figures a year, But then it's foolish to think they're not struggling with something else that I've got easy.
Oh, yeah.
And they're looking at me saying, must be nice,
Yeah, seriously.
He can see his toes, you know what I mean? Everyone's got every. I don't. You know what I mean? You can cut that out.
Yeah. No, I mean,
I'm just thinking.
I don't know. Yeah.
I'm just thinking of things that people are insecure about, or people,
right?
That can be convicting for people.
Yeah, I saw. It's crazy you say this. I think we touched on this in an episode with Isaiah, but there's 2 times, even just today, I had a phone conversation, and then I just left a cool event at Path Recovery today. And
cool.
But the first conversation I had was with a good friend, an old friend of mine, who was very, very pivotal in my journey. Right, his presence in my life kind of solidified, God's hand in a lot of ways. And we were just talking, and some things have happened in his life, and he was like, I just don't know. I've lost this, I've lost this, and I'm just kind of finding my way, and I'm like, and I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, something that's been a recurring theme of like, if God took everything away from me today, who would I be?
The Job story, right?
Oh, you're right. I mean, it really is. It really is. But try to apply it, try to apply it to your life. And then it's like, okay. Then the other thing that I saw today was like I said, I was at Path, and I guess one of the people that have been in recovery drew this picture, and it was a little man with a mask on, and then a little mask beside it, and said, the masks we wear. And I'm just looking at it, I'm thinking, man, that's all a comparison is. Or it's like, either I'm not happy with my mask, or that's it. I'm not happy with the mess. But I don't know. I don't think that's even the problem. The fact that we wear them in the first place is what sucks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, go back to Genesis, go back to Adam.
Right.
Of like, I put fig leaves on.
Right. Because they're embarrassed, weren't they? They're ashamed.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, so forgive me if I'm rambling, but as I'm processing all this and I'm looking at what you're saying and you know, and in your journey and the journey of myself and all these people that are maybe listening to this podcast, and I hear this consistent and just, you know, the common denominator of not being okay with who we are. And I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Seriously, like, how can we be that way?
Mm-hmm.
And hear the things we hear from God, read the things we read in Scripture, see the significance that we have, not in a haughty way,
of course,
but in the value of who we are. And yet we still consume ourselves with these false narratives and masks that we wear of,
right.
You know, like, I can't be good enough.
Right. Well, and I got two things on that because that was awesome. First is we are not good enough. And that's the best part, right? Because God sent his only son to die for us. And that is how we're able to go and take the next step, right? Every day. One of my favorite, because a lot of comparison, what I was thinking about when you just said that, and I love it, a lot of comparison is shame. It's shame of who you are. And kind of leads me back to that shame of what has happened in your life instead of just accepting and appreciating, because you can't go back and change anything. And my point at the beginning of the podcast was you shouldn't want to anyway, because look who you are now.
Yeah.
Look at the lessons you've learned. But one of my favorite little tidbits that I heard from my wife, she was talking about Eminem, like Marshall Mathers. And she read somewhere that before his rap battles, when he was first starting off, he would go first and he would air all of his dirty laundry.
Oh, yeah.
You know, about living in a trailer with his mom and whatever, his illegitimate child, whatever, all the stuff. And then by the time the next guy got up, he had no ammunition. Yeah. And like, you know, there's a saying like that in the Word. It's not a saying, it's in the Word. Talks about walking in the light instead of the darkness.
Okay.
Right? And that is confessing your sin. And not in a weird way of like, we're just going to sit down. I'm going to say something bad. You say something bad. And we go back and forth.
Yeah.
But just the idea of not being ashamed of the decisions God has allowed us to make in our sinful nature, because we are sinful. Yeah. Because that leads to repentance and that leads to sanctification.
Yeah.
And I heard someone say one time, and I love it, he goes, you wake up every day and you try to be a little bit more like Jesus, and then you die because it never ends.
Yeah.
And so the masks we wear, we don't need to. You know, the things that I've done, the things that I've done before as a believer, all the way up to the things I did last week. You know, I shouldn't be ashamed to share them with you if I'm not okay with them.
Yeah.
And that's how the devil loses his grip on us, right? Is because we're meant for community.
Yeah.
And I remember watching, went through a phase where I just watched all the Planet Earths.
Okay.
Because they're dope, you know? And I was like, this is amazing. But one thing I learned that I thought was really interesting was that I always thought like apex predators, like, you know, lionesses and all those cool animals, that whenever they were hungry, they just went and they, you know, killed a wildebeest or whatever, ate an elephant. And then I learned that when they hunt, they wait for either a young or injured part of the pack or herd for them to get broken off from the pack, and then they pounce. Because if they were to attack the animal as a herd, they would get killed.
Yeah.
Elephants would stomp on them or whatever, and in fact, these animals that are being hunted, the strong ones go on the outside and they put the young and the weak ones in the middle so they can be protected.
I mean, it's scriptures, roaming like a lion, seeking whom he may devour. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I guess in my mind, it was a free for all, but same thing in the spiritual realm of the enemy just wants to break us off and get us alone, because when he gets us alone, then he can put these stupid thoughts in our heads. Yeah. Right. Like you said about Genesis, did he really say that? You started thinking, maybe he didn't, he did say that, that I'm his beloved and that, but is that true? Does God really love me? Am I just worthless? And then you go down those paths and then, this person will give me worth, and you get into a sticky situation there. Yeah.
Man. I love how we keep going back to Genesis, because it's just like, it's touching on so many of the things we struggle with still to this day, however many years later, right?
That was my favorite part. One of the things that really solidified my belief in Jesus and in God is really the only book that does not contradict itself. And I realized reading through the Old Testament and the New, 2,000 years later, we're looking, and then some, we're looking at this stuff and the problems that the Israelites, the Romans, the Corinthians, like all the stuff that they were going through back then, we're still going through today.
Same thing, man.
It's not any different. It's just masked as something different.
Yeah.
And it really fires me up and gets me upset because we don't learn from our mistakes. Yeah. But luckily, Jesus died for us and he paid for our sins with his blood. But it's just so interesting to see how the wool can be pulled over our eyes sometimes. Yeah. You can see people making the same mistake over and over again, rejecting God, and you can just look at them and you almost want to grab them and say, don't you see? Do you see all you're doing is looking for love, and you're looking for a savior. You're looking for, love that won't let you down, and a person who won't let you down, life that won't end, because we have that written on our hearts.
Yeah, but it's not just those who are rejecting God. I mean, I see that so much in the body. Like of people, yes, the name Jesus, this, but you're still miserable. You're still seeking something that's not God. And it's like, why, what happened? Right. Where did the disconnect happen that you said, I come to Jesus, yet you still live in this, this illusion of that there has to be something more.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, it's rough, man.
And it's so difficult when it comes to I'm trying to choose my words wisely.
Sure. Just be careless.
Just
be careless. Who cares?
It bothers me. Something that really burdens my heart and that really hurts is, I think, because I'm becoming a little older as a Christian. I'm a 5-year-old now.
Nice.
I'm eating solid foods. Put my own pants on. The thing that is
got my
different.
Big boy pants on.
My big boy pants. The thing that's really difficult for me is when I see people who have fallen away from the church, or who have. I know that's like a buzzword right now, but the whole church hurt thing.
Yeah.
I have a friend, Lane, who always says, he goes, he says whenever he's come across someone who has fallen away, he goes, and doesn't believe in God, he goes, tell me, without making it a people problem, tell me what your basis is for not believing in God. And he goes, a lot of people will say, well, my church when I was growing up, and he goes, sounds like a people problem.
Yeah.
And he goes, people are terrible.
Yeah, people suck.
You know, like
People suck.
we are. And the school that I teach at, I love it. The headmaster of the whole place, like the, head of everything, when they always have the preschoolers and the seniors on the stage at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
And the seniors hand like a scroll to the preschoolers.
Okay.
They call it the passing of the scrolls. Yeah. Passing the torch.
Yeah.
And I love it. He always says to the student body, he goes, your parents will let you down. Your teachers will let you down. I will let you down. Jesus will never let you down. And I freaking love that. Because that was my answer because I was terrified of letting myself down. And then I learned that it's okay to let yourself down because Jesus has you. And those are those valley moments when you fall hard. It was a whole nother meaning for me of Psalm 23 when, though I walk through the valley of darkness,
I read that with my son this morning. Let's go.
It's amazing because it's not that God will see you through the darkness. He is with you in the darkness, and he helps you stand in the darkness.
Yeah.
He walks with you. And when you come out of the darkness of the valley, you have a amazing new tool on how to deal with what you just went through.
Yes, I will add a caveat. As long as you walk through it, if you escape it or you run from it,
ooh, I like this. Yes,
then
absolutely.
You're gonna miss out on what you were supposed to be being prepared for. Like you're gonna miss it.
Yes,
but yes, absolutely. He's with us in the darkness. I mean, was it Richard Rohr said it's either awe and wonder or suffering that brings change.
Yeah. Yes. And again, back to the comparison thing. It's okay. And I wonder how many people truly understand this and how many people like need to understand it more is it's okay. In fact, it's better to sit in it.
Yeah.
And to fully deal with it. Like I back in August, late July, early August, I stopped drinking. And, pre-believer, very much functional alcoholic. Wasn't a question of if I was going to have a drink. It was like when and what, kind of thing. After I became a believer and got married, I chilled it way out. But I still realized that it would still excite me. Yeah. It was still something I was looking forward to. What's that saying? It's either a good thing or a God thing, right? Okay. Like if it's something if it's something you need to make yourself happy, then it's an idol. Right? Gotcha. I forget who it was, but they said, it's easy to find your idols because all you have to do is think about what you daydream about. And that's what, that's...
Yeah, I can see that.
That's a generalization. It's a postcard, bumper sticker.
I could see that. But I could see that. But self-care is important too. Yes. You have to.
1,000,000%. But what I mean by that is, do you need something to get you through it?
Right.
Or does it excite you a little too much that you're like, But for years, it was something that even when I wasn't abusing it, every time I thought like, maybe I should give this up, I had a tug in my heart of like, that doesn't sound like it's fun. Let's not do that one. Let's do something else. Yeah. Give up something else. And then it finally got to a point where I didn't like the fruit that it was bearing on my life. And
that's what matters.
And that's what matters. And talk about like branches being trimmed,
for seriously,
so that, good branches can grow that bear good fruit. And I didn't think I could do it because I hadn't gone longer than 3 months since I was 20.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so that all being said, it's the idea of, it's good to sit in the things. It's good to like really deal with it.
Yeah.
Don't, like you said, don't escape it. Really get in there and like get all the bacteria out so it doesn't scab over and get infected, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, because so that's something that I'm building a kind of a book and a 4-part course and all this stuff, right? But one of the topics is on wilderness and how Jesus was in the wilderness. I had a just conversation with a friend of mine. We were talking about, wilderness. I guess Lent is happening, and I'm not too familiar with it. I'm not from the Catholic side, but just speaking on the wilderness, and he was like, "Go look at it. Go look at the story of it." And I'm reading on it, and I'm just, it's so profound in the way that he had all these opportunities. He could have escaped it, could have eaten. I mean, it's not. I mean, you can make it about fasting and prayer if you want to, but it's not that. But what he truly did, he just stayed where he was supposed to be, as uncomfortable as it was, and for 40 days. And you look at the number 40 biblically, that just means until completion, right?
100%.
And I'm like, that's it. He just stayed long enough to let God do the work that he had in his life. And then his ministry started. He hit it.
And when the devil came to tempt him, he rebuked him.
Yeah.
Because that's going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. When we're sitting in the darkness and we're going to have temptations of, you could do it a little bit, or like, you can, it doesn't, you don't need to totally be healed from this. You can still have some resentment towards,
That sounds like my alcoholism. It's like, you don't need to completely quit drinking. You can still have beers at football games.
Right.
Yeah, you can still do this. Yeah. But no, yeah, it is. But it's, and just to bring it back to the topic of comparison, because I feel like we got a little off, but I love it. I love the Holy Spirit moving, and even sitting in your own uncomfortability with your identity right now and saying, maybe I'm not where I think I want to be. But stopping long enough to ask God, where have you put me? Where have you placed me? How can I be okay with where I am now? Right? The complacency that Paul maybe talks about. How can I be okay with just what is now?
Right.
Yeah. What's the present moment, like you spoke to? How we don't understand it, but how can I? That's I guess it's an age-old question, something that takes a long time to figure out.
But also, I'll add, if you don't mind, like, there's a really, I won't go there. Waking up every day, and instead of looking to the next, next thing. Ask God, what do you have for me today?
Yeah.
And I do that every morning. And it calibrates me to look around because, as I'm sure you are, like, we're entrepreneurs, we're freelancers.
Yeah.
So things look very different, like, and in the absolute best way, because some things that we do are sexy and some things that we do are not sexy. And, like, my wife and I got off the road. We were on touring with the band I play for 2 weeks. And it was huge sold out theaters every night and traveling and autographs and all that dumb stuff that doesn't really matter, but it does matter because of the human connection and the joy that it brings. But then, this week and next week, I'm at the school teaching a lot. And for me, because, the thing that I teach at the school is drumline, and then I substitute teach. So I'm not even really in classes where I'm teaching. I'm loving on kids and like being with them, but it's a glorified study hall. So like, how can I be present in that and not get, bitter like other people and be like, oh, that's not as much fun.
Yeah.
I'm just a teacher today. Like, what are you talking about? Like, no, that is an amazing place to be of like, how can I be the light of Jesus today to students or to your neighbor or,
Yeah, that's good. Because you are the light of the world, like you said earlier. That's it. That's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
Be shown.
And also not to be a carbon copy of somebody else.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, look at your fingerprints.
They're all unique, aren't
They're
they?
all unique. Every single one of
How
us.
cool is God? That's insane.
Of how many people in the world have over all of time.
And also to even just talk about this conversation right now. This would be a different podcast today if you weren't here. It was somebody else.
Yeah.
It'd be different if I was not here and somebody else. It'd be different if Secret was somebody else. There'd be a different energy in the room.
Yeah. All different.
And it would be completely different. So give glory to God that you are where you are because that's making all the difference.
For such a time as this.
I'm saying.
Well, that's it, man. Yeah, let's go. Well, I think we're about out of time.
Thank you so much for having me, dude.
Man, it's been awesome.
Yeah.
It's been awesome. I love the way that you think, and I love just the processes that you're going through and your faith.
Ditto.
And congratulations on stopping drinking.
Thanks.
That's an amazing thing. It's not easy to do once you've been engulfed in that lifestyle. So yeah, man. I think if you had to say, and I'll just throw you on the spot.
Ooh, I love it.
If you had to give one piece of advice to someone listening who may be struggling with either comparison, there's not much you can say to prideful people, but
you're not that great. No,
yeah, you suck. But if there's something you could say to just you say to the camera, you say to me, whatever, of something that you have learned in your own journey of experience of dealing with that and how to come back to the identity that God gives you. What is it that you could say?
The age-old phrase that I've always heard parents say or, teachers say to kids or to, other people is, you're not God's gift to the world, right? Like, oh, you're not that special, that kind of thing, right? And my retort to that is, you are God's gift. But it's not for your own glory, it's for His. So stay in the present. Understand that where you are today, no one else could be. And deal with that.
That's good. Awesome. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Wow. I'm speechless, There's a lot of things that we deal with in this life and on this podcast. And, comparison is just another struggle that we have to fight through. So if you're dealing with it, reach out to somebody. If you got some issues, like you said, like John said, confession to somebody, deal with it. Don't run from it. Don't hide from it. Walk through the darkness, walk through the valley with God, knowing that He's with you.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you again to Path Recovery for sponsoring this episode. They just had their ribbon cutting, their opening ceremony today. It was a wonderful thing. A lot of people coming out to support. Make sure you check them out, Path Recovery TN. And also make sure you check out shop.thevisionpodcast.com. Get you some merch, help support. And then you also check out thevisionpodcast.com. Enter your email to stay up to date on this course that I'm releasing, some other things that may be coming out too with Artos Learning you heard in one of the previous episodes with Rick. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you again, John, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
We're breaking down walls, tearing apart the lies. Together we'll stand, watch the whole